Welcome to Stories from the Mat with Jan, a quiet place for families, educators and experts to come together and build confident learners from the very beginning. I'm Jan. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to Stories from the Mat with Jan. But Jan is not alone. Oh, no, she isn't. I'm joined today with children's author Linda Murphy. Linda is the author of this wonderful book, Olli's Cave of Treasures. It's a wonderful and thoughtful story that explores ideas of possessions, value, gratitude, and what happens when we collect more than we really need. First of all, a big welcome to my dear friend Linda. I'm in a studio in Orkney Islands to the north of Scotland. And Linda, where are you coming from today?
I am in South Carolina in Myrtle Beach, and it's very warm, but it's lovely.
Well, it's amazingly warm here in Orkney, so let us enjoy the warm day. Thank you, Linda, for agreeing to being here with us today. And there's one thing that fascinates me about you, Linda, and it's your journey. You started in accountancy, moved into education, and you've written a wonderful children's book. Can you tell us a bit about how that all happened?
Yes, so I ended up going to university for accounting. I took a couple high school classes and I learned that, wow, I really enjoy this and I understand it. They always say accounting is like a language, and it's true. Some people can understand it, some people can't, even very intelligent people. But I'm like, oh, this is good. This is something I could consider doing for a career. So I spent 2 decades doing various jobs that I loved, all sorts of different things using my accounting background. But then, in my mid 40s, a friend of mine who was teaching at a vocational high school said, we are looking for a business teacher, and I think you would be amazing. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. So it took me about a year, but then I found myself in education teaching high school juniors and seniors accounting. And I cannot tell you how much I loved that, how rewarding it was. And to this day, I still keep in contact with many of my students. It was absolutely wonderful. Um, and then I retired full time from that. I actually still tutor online accounting, high school students and college students. Um, but I'm like, I said, I want to continue teaching, but in a different way. And there's so many lessons that we need to teach children. And I discovered this world because my children are in their early 30s. I've been out of that world for a little while, right? Children's storybooks. But once I got back in, I thought, this is a place I really want to stay. It's almost like going to Disney World or something. It's just fabulous and exciting. And what I didn't realize is how much in very important learning is taking place in that space. And I'm like, this is where I want to be. So that's how I found myself here. And I'm just so pleased.
Well, I'm glad you did because underneath there's something much bigger. The idea about possessions and values and what really matters. Was that the story that you always wanted to tell?
Yes. So I started out, and I am still going to do this, but I wanted to help children become more financially literate. And then I began to realize a few things. One, literacy is directly related to our financial goals and how we end up later in life. Um, also, We understand usually later in life that it isn't all those possessions we worked so hard to acquire, that made us happy, that truly, it's just those special things that bring us meaning. And I thought, how good would it be if children could learn that lesson young? I mean, if we in life, adults, could learn that lesson as a child. Think of all the years that we didn't keep trying to make more money, to buy more things, to get a bigger house, to store everything. And it's just this treadmill rat race. And I thought, wow, let's try to get that lesson out there earlier. Plus, there's research that shows I had stumbled upon something that said that the correlation is absolutely incredible. Children learn that lesson about money, like, by 7 years old, right? And just by observing and things like that, and that will influence them in all the decisions they're gonna make later in life as they're growing up, as they're teenagers. So, yes, it's all tied in. I am gonna write future books that talk a little bit more about savings and spending and stuff like that. But this is all tied in. The way we collect and the way we want to, you know, our possessions and what is valuable to us. It's all so connected. And I thought, yeah, let's help children learn that. Yeah.
Linda, what I found wonderful about reading this story, so I read it without children first. I couldn't wait. I hadn't. And it meant something to me. As you get older, you want to divest. You don't want all of those things. And when I've read it to children, and they look at Ollie because he had all this stuff he felt was so important, but he couldn't get his blanket and he couldn't whirl and twirl in his coral cave. And for the children, it really made sense. So I'm going to ask you a question. When children read the story, when you've read the story to a lot of children, um, what do you hope stays with them after they've closed that book?
So, what I hope stays with them is that they think, like, maybe my teddy bear is worth more than another new toy, right? That's what I want them to, like, look around in their surroundings and be like, this is really what's important to me. Not that I have to go and get that new, water gun or that new ball or that new glove or, because again, it's those things that we feel them inside, right? When for Ollie, it was his blanket or a story shell. Um, Even though those were possessions, but they were not like valuable treasures and just like being comforted by those little things in our life that again we realize later in life. If you look around and be like, I could almost do without everything if I just had this. And I just feel like it gives us, it's almost like putting on a different pair of glasses. Like we see things differently. I used to be like, can I afford it? And if I could, I bought it. But now I think, you know, do I need it and am I gonna use it? Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't wanna have just a lot of stuff that I'm not gonna use. And if I could get back all those things that I did spend time and money getting and that I didn't really want or need, um, again, I think that could be like so important in our lives. Not only in how happy and content we are, but also how it affects us financially, because we could be doing a lot better things with that money.
That's what I thought about because there's always something nicer that you want. And I've started thinking, do I really need it or do I just want it? And do I have to? This was something that I was triggered by this book, and it helped me with the grandchildren. Do they really need it, or are we just clamoring to what the world says they should have? And it's really helped me make decisions. So I'm so pleased you wrote this story. But I have another question. What do you think stories like this can do to help children think differently about what is enough?
Well, again, what I love about stories is that we're, exposing children to important ideas, but not in a preachy way. And I think that stories allow children to experience the ideas without being feel like they're being taught a lesson, right? So if we were to say to a child, you should be grateful, right? Which we probably do say to children, but they're going to probably tune that out. But when they watch Ollie struggle, right, with a cave that's overflowing, and then they discover that letting go actually makes room for what matters most, then I feel like, children experience the lesson alongside him. So again, it isn't about, this is about like helping us where we don't have to tell children no, right?
Mhm.
It's more like, oh, well, yeah, it could be yes, but do you really want it? Are you going to need it? Can you wait a couple days and then maybe see, do I still want it next week just as bad? Like, it's just intentionality because what happens is we are so bombarded with media and everything else in all our culture that we're told like you're going to feel great if you have this, and then if you have this, buy this set, and then et cetera, et cetera. It's to keep buying, and we do that impulsively. We're like, yeah, I can afford it. Why not? Why shouldn't I have that? Well, because do you really need 10 pocketbooks or do you really need to have 20 pair of shoes? Maybe you do if that's, your job is to dress that way, etc. But for most of us, it isn't. And then I look at some people's closets and you can't even find anything. So I know you're not using the stuff in there because you can't even get into that closet to look around at the dresses or the purses. It's just stuffed with stuff. So it's just about be intentional. Be intentional. And isn't it great if you tell a child, well, Jimmy, think about that. Do you want it? And then you can get it. But like, just think about what you're doing. That's it.
I think one of the things I liked, I'm just trying to find it in the picture here, that picture there with all the stuff, and he couldn't find what he
Yeah.
really wanted. And it is stuff.
Yeah.
And you try to clean up a child's room. I've done this with them there, but I need this, I need that. Well, look at this here. You can't have any more because look at your cupboard. It's overflowing. And it's painful for them. And then you had these piles that I liked. And you give them those piles and it's so hard. But then I think of myself, I'm about as bad. So you really have to think, have I used it? And be ruthless. You have to be ruthless. And I love, as you can tell, I love this story because I think it's meaningful for both the child and the adult, no matter what age of the adult. And for me, it was wonderful. So one of the things I talk about a lot is about the relationship between a child and an adult when they're sharing a book together. So what do you think happens in those quiet moments when a story like yours is read and explored together?
Oh, reading to children, right? I just spent a week, Jan, at a summer camp. I tried to send you the video, but it was too big, and the children all wrote a book that we're gonna make a hardcover book about. It's incredible the magic that happens when we read with our children. Never mind the statistics of how little we have to read to them to improve literacy. It's mind-boggling. Plus, we want to get children hooked, so to speak, on enjoying reading so that they will continue to do it in the future. But when we read with kids, we create a safe space, right? Where they can ask questions that that might never otherwise come up for them to have that opportunity to ask that particular question. And those conversations are extremely important, probably more than that particular book at that particular moment. It's given the child the opportunity to ask those questions. And then what happens is during that special time of when they're bonding and you're reading the story, children are always going to remember that. It's like that feeling, right? And that's part of them, I think, learning to have that love of reading, you know, those special books, and that's what we're trying to establish too. Connect the child with the love of reading. Not any one particular book per se, but that process, and where it can be a safe space. They can go there and discover new things and find new things. I think there's no better gift we could give to a child.
Those insights that children give, um, one of the other things I talk about that it's been proven there's no average child. Each child is unique, just like there's no such thing as average, actually. It's a mathematical thing, but when you try and find the so-called average person, it just doesn't exist.
Mhm.
So, from your experience, what do you think are the key elements that are needed when you're dealing with children, knowing that there's no average child, that they're all unique? What have you seen in your experience?
Well, I just recently listened to your episode about no average, and we all progress and adapt at our own speed, right? And how like we can't label children. It was like amazing how children will pick up, right? Those subtle things of, you know, well, Jimmy isn't smart in school, or Jimmy can't, play baseball, or like whatever. We do these things, and then, like you said, then they're gonna stop trying, right? Even could probably do that, but we're labeling them, and then they're gonna label themselves, which is so bad. Um, I also learned that in education and like even growing up in school, like you remember things that were said to you, at such young age. Like children are so impressionable. And I think we have to be careful about what we say to them. And, I think there's no better gift than telling a child they can be anything they want to be, or they can do anything, that they might have to work harder at it. Like I remember I used to have students that would say, I can't do accounting, miss. I can't, and they would and I'm like, yes, you can. Yes, it's going to be a little harder for you, and you might have to work at it more than Susie next to you who's getting it really easily. But we all can. So we can't put those limiting, restrictions, right, on
Yeah.
ourselves um as adults that we unintentionally do to our children. So one good lesson I learned in education too was always raise the standards for kids. Let them always reach up and stuff, and don't discount a child and be like, they do that. Keep working with them. And yeah, children are amazing. Yeah, I just again spent a week with 40 children aged 5 to 12. And boy, the excitement, enthusiasm, and some of them started off thinking they're never going to be able to write this book, and, just and how so they felt so accomplished at the end. Um, it gives me, it just fills me up, fills me up with hope for the future, and it's, uh, it's amazing. Yeah, the energy, it's so positive, right, Jan? I know you feel that too. And,
Yeah.
anything we can do to help our kids love reading, I think is then they'll teach themselves, right? Almost like I used to think we just have to give them content and we just have to, no, you just have to spark that seed, get that love out there, get them asking questions. It's another thing I love um, about your programs and what you talk about raising confident learners, right? That's what, because if you can arm them with that, just confidence, in
Yeah.
themselves, and then the world really can be their oyster, right? It's like it's just, how are you looking through the lens?
And what I find with
Yeah.
children, they are little scientists. They are. They're checking you out. They're looking for evidence. They're pushing the boundary. You're right. You do have to raise the standard because they are not just being there idling. They're being active. And because they're being active, they're learning all the time. Learning isn't just in the classroom. You're so right. It's in everything we do. I wish I was at your camp. I think that would have been fun. 40 children.
It's exhausting, but it was wonderful.
I'm sure you were.
Mm.
So this is quick fire. I'm going to ask you some questions, about 3, maybe 4, and you just need to give a one word or a phrase answer. Some people have actually given me a long answer. Fine. But here's your first question. A story that you never get tired of.
Well, I loved the Madeline book series. I could read that. Still have books here, and I always read that to my 2 girls, and yep,
I'm with you
love
with
it.
those. Okay. One word that describes your stories.
Gentle, I'm gonna say, because I believe that some of life's biggest lessons are best discovered gently rather than taught directly, and that's what I'm trying to do.
What do you think children notice and adults miss?
So, as you mentioned before, children notice everything. They are sponges, scientists, they notice everything. And in books, I feel like children notice hidden objects and illustrations that adults pass right over. They're so observant.
And do you have a moment when a child really surprised you?
I love when children feel insecure in the beginning, like in this kids camp that we did, and they don't have any confidence in themselves. And then after they've completed this thing that they think they couldn't do, just how that you can just see how they stand taller, prouder, and I just get surprised. Kids are like they're resilient, they're just amazing. We just have to help them believe in themselves. Help them just feel like your goal to be confident learners.
Yep.
That's exactly what we're trying to do.
And now, is there one thing that you hope parents, grandparents, carers, or educators remember when they're reading a story like Ollie's Cave of Treasures to children? What's the one thing you hope that they remember?
So I hope that they remember that they are grateful for the things that they already have, um, and that every time they say yes to something, they might be saying no to something else, right? So Ollie learned that by saying yes to everything, in the end, he lost space to spin around and he couldn't find his blanket. And so, um, the book isn't really about owning fewer things or not having nice things. I love to have nice things. But it's about appreciating the things that we have. Because sometimes we accumulate things and then don't really appreciate them. They get tossed somewhere and we never see them again, or, things like that. So let's just be aware. That's all. Be aware of what's in our environments. And, some people have, especially here in America, we have many people have outside storage space that they pay for to store all their things. I don't understand that. And I hope that people just are more intentional. That's all. It's not about saying no. I want us to be able to not have to say no, for children to learn and regulate, kind of self regulate. That's my goal, to help learn more about self regulating. Also, not tucking their self worth into their possessions.
That's so powerful, Linda, really is. And as I say, the book had a huge impact on me, and I'm really grateful for your book. And where can listeners and viewers find out more about your books and your work?
Oh, Jan, they can visit my website, lindamurphybooks.com. And there is a link there to purchase the book. But there's also some resources that parents and educators can download and use with the book. Yeah, so they can find out a lot about me and Ollie's story there.
Okay, and I
LindaMurphyBooks.com.
will be sharing the link in the description, and it will be at the beginning and the close of this show. So, thank you so much, Linda. And I think that's what really stays with me, not just your story, but that you can find practical ways that can lead you back to the things that really matter. And for Ollie, that was having his blanket and the space to whirl and twirl in his cozy coral cave. And perhaps that's why children return to this story. And it's one of the ways children can explore possibilities, make connections, and discover who they're becoming. And perhaps that's why stories like this matter so much. So this has been Stories from the Mat with Jan and Linda, a place to think, notice, and begin. Thank you.
So thank you for joining me. Until the next time, take care.